Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, Amit.
Yes, ma'am. Back to
Back.
studies.
Oh, wow. I'm so happy. Just a minute. Let me in, everyone. And then I see a lot of familiar faces, like familiar name.
यस
All are back.
नेटवर्क नहीं आईडी बराबर आप लोग ये
How
Let's.
are you, ma'am?
I'm good. I'm super excited today, actually.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi. Okay, let's start. Regarding OC. So OC is not a PC, first of all. So do not take it as a simple thing. As you clear PC means you are good. No. Now it is the last thing. So you have to give your 100% dedication. And here you are the next Mamta. So you are the speaker and I am the listener. So not a single thing you are gonna miss when you are verbalize. So this is the exam of verbalization. Okay. Basically, this exam shows that how you gonna perform
बैटरी
in
बैक दे दो।
clinic. Sorry, just a minute. Sorry. So basically, the OCE exam. This exam is a exam for the verbalization. This exam you have to work with all the things together. You have to keep in your mind about the ethics. You have to keep in mind about your given case. Here you have to think about the theory portion, you have to think about your practical portion, and you have to verbalize as per the questions. So basically, this OC, you are working to show your talent in front of examiner. And now this exam, everyone must keep the videos on. Why? Because right now it's okay, but when you are when we are doing the practice, the thing is behind the curtain you can speak. When you are on the public, when you are on the stage, it is difficult to speak. Sometimes you know that, okay, very good, I can speak this thing. But when your turn comes, you are mute. And this is happened so many times with my many students. So basic thing is for the OC preparation, try to verbalize in a very confident manner rather than over and under. Very confident manner, as well as what is appropriate as per the given case. And trust me, even I'm like, I don't want to say anything wrong thing, but the thing is students are very easy for their OC. They don't understand the importance of OC because OC is equivalent to CPT first attempt. If you fail, I don't want you guys to do this thing, but if you fail means minus one attempt of CPT, very tough. I don't want this portion for you guys. Another thing is take it as like last thing you are going to be a registered PT, which is a permanent license. So consider this is important. Do not underestimate this exam. Do not think that, okay, do not run for the money only because if you are resident PT, it is a temporary money. So vision should be broad and you are working for your permanent license for lifetime money. And this is, I see, currently also I see many students, literally they are working for their resident PT, but just now you have exam. What happen if the exam fails? No one gonna accept you as a resident PT anymore. So we are not working for the resident PT, we are working for our registered PT license. So understand that importance. OCE is very, very important and you have to verbalize every day. Gradually you have to fix your portion that, okay, today I'm going to focus with this component, I'm going to verbalize step by step. If you are moving ahead, you are very good. Today we are discussing the strategies of the case 1. So case 1, what is the case 1, what is the case 2, what is the OCE framework? OCE, the framework for you guys is only the two portion 1 and 2. First portion is your assessment. Second portion is your treatment. And both the portion ethics merge. Now ethics, what we did in our PC, very good. But here in that ethics, we are selecting one answer out of 4 options. Here you have to verbalize all 4 options. So that is the difference. Here you are not going to select the one option. Here you're going to verbalize yourself with all the things together. So ethics is based your background. Ethical questions are there. And you have to verbalize each and every component step by step without forgetting single thing. Clear? Now moving forward. Assessment. Let's go with the assessment first. Assessment is your case 1. Now assessment, you are getting the case of MSK, neuro, cardio, pulmonary or pedia. So we are rotating with this MSK, neuro, cardio, pulmonary and pedia. Assessment is the main thing. If you fail to provide your clinical interpretation, so what is the actual case? This is a case of tennis elbow. This is a case of, I can say ACL grade 1 injury. If you couldn't recognize, it is really risky for your exam to clear. So now you are qualified enough to identify that what is actually case. Clear? So assessment, the moral of the story is you have to identify that what is the actual cases. But you are not going to identify just randomly that, okay, I can see this is the case of tennis elbow. No, you have to verbalize each and everything in your assessment portion. And gradually you are coming across with your clinical impression. Here we are not going to say the diagnosis, we are going to say the clinical impression. So this is the way we are working with our case 1. Now let's go and dig the case 1. What is the case 1? Case 1, assessment. Assessment has a few components. Assessment has acceptance. So do you accept this patient? Second, informed consent. Third, subjective examination. Fourth, objective examination. These 4 components, when you verbalize each and every sentence, you have to verbalize with your rationale that why you are doing this thing. Because here in your exam, you have to prove yourself that I am appropriate physiotherapist in front of examiner. So your verbalization is the keyword. When you listen to me, you feel good. But the same thing when you are on my seat, you have difficulty to verbalize. Verbalize is very important with rational. I am accepting this patient. Why? I am taking the informed consent. How and why? I am doing the subjective examination. Why? And I am doing the objective examination. Why? Now it is not simple, just one word. That why? No. Each and every sentence you have to show the meaning that okay, I am doing this because I feel patient has a pain. So detailed examination of the pain give me the idea to evaluate as per her condition. So each and everything you have to say why as per your given case. This is very easy if you understood in a thorough manner, and it is tough if you don't understand. So you have to work with your step-by-step method, acceptance, informed consent, subjective examination, objective examination. After that, in your case, you are getting some additional information. This additional information you have to merge with your old subjective and objective examination, and you are end up with the clinical impression that okay, what is the actual case? In this exam, only clinical impression is not appropriate. You have to work with your differential diagnosis. that what is the differential diagnosis. Why I am saying that this is the case and why I am not saying this is not the case. So DD, differential diagnosis, you have to verbalize in front of examiner in a systemic manner that okay, I feel this is the case, but my reason behind my clinical impression is this based on my subjective examination, objective examination, and the additional information. So this clinical impression gives you the idea about your ability to identify the case. And you have to identify this case, very, very important in your exam. So this is the just 5 component in your assessment. Clear? Very easy. Just one case. You have to read the case. You have to work with your acceptance, informed consent, subjective, objective, clinical impression with your additional information, and then verbalize. This is the one case extending 1.5 hours. You have to verbalize this thing. You get initially 5 minutes to read the question, read whole scenario. Now in this scenario, you have to use the whiteboard. The whiteboard is available in Dollarama. You have to use this whiteboard. You have to identify the points. You are not going to write it down the sentence. Here, you have to go with the points that okay, what is the scenario, what is the situation, and you have to write it down the points. We will discuss in the detail that how to write it down the whiteboard. But just a brief idea that okay, today you're gonna observe this scenario in front of you. You have to read that okay, what is this scenario? Take your 5 minutes. Everyone, take your 5 minutes. Be ready with the pen and paper and write it down. What are the points you're gonna conclude in this scenario? 5 minutes is on. Read the scenario and pinpoint in your board or on your pen and paper right now. This is a little bit extra information. Just a minute. Done. See, now in this given case, 38-year-old office worker. So he's not retired, he's working right now. So office worker who present with a complaint of right elbow pain. Location is right elbow pain. Numbness in his finger for the past month. His symptoms is worsen when his elbow remained bent for the longer period of the time. So here it is an aggravating factor, such as his typing, talking on phone, resting on armrest, occasional weakness, particularly gripping, begin to interfere with the work. He has not experienced neck pain and trauma in the past. He denies any systemic symptoms. Medical history significant only for the hypertension, which is controlled by the daily amlodipine. He does not smoke or drink socially. As described him, sorry, he does not smoke, drink socially. Sorry, my mistake. And describe himself as an active recreational cyclist who rides about 50 kilometers on weekend only. So this is his hobby. He works long hours at the job, spending 9 hours. He is a new father to a 7-month-old baby, which also had the strain, which is increased difficulty to carry the child, sometimes frustrated, despite having a strong support from his wife, who handle most of the childcare. Now, whenever you are reading, so up to this one paragraph, in this one, now, because you are representing yourself for the case. So this is, remember in our bachelor, we are representing ourselves as a case presentation. This is a similar like that. Here, the main case is going towards the right elbow pain. Associated symptoms are there. There is a occupational history is there. Medical history is there. Systemic history is not significant. Patient also has a hobby which is affected right now, as well as baby. Now this is in your OC considered as a social determinants. What happened? Just a minute. Something. Okay. Show social determinants. Let me write it down here. So whenever you are presenting your case, you have to keep in your mind that, okay, what is the case is going towards? It is the right elbow pain. Something is already present and now it is worsened. So it is not any mechanism of injury. I'm just giving you the idea that how you're going to read this case. Okay, there is no mechanism of injury. There is no accidental trauma. Patient has the job, which is the occupation. So occupation is there. Aggravating factor is there. Patient's medical history is there. Social history is there. Patient's hobby is there. And now patient has the newborn baby. And she is depressed, anxious, wife support, everything comes with the social determinants. So this first paragraph is somewhat cover your subjective examination. When we discuss, you come to know. But this is something you're gonna come across with your subjective examination. Clear? Let's go with the second paragraph. Pain, achy, tingling, discomfort around the elbow, radiation to the medial forearm fingers, numbness, paresthesia aggravated by the sustained elbow flexion, direct pressure, relief is achieved with the break. So again, this is also pain history. If you see, functionally, these symptoms is limited his efficiency at work, disturb his cycling training, reduce his ability to hold the baby. He is anxious about his performance upcoming marathon, which is some stress point, as his current hand weakness and discomfort prevent him riding effectively. There is a tenderness in the medial elbow, altered sensation in fourth and fifth digit, occasional weakness, prolonged cycling postures, and work ergonomics contribute to irritate the symptoms. I am just giving the short scenario first day to get the idea. This comes something as a objective examination. Something problem. Objective examination. So here what I told you that case 1 we are going with the acceptance first. Do you accept this patient? Now why I am saying this in front of examiner? So it shows that okay, I am accepting the patient as per the patient autonomy. I am building the repo and I am clarify that okay, I am participating in this assessment process with my sound knowledge. Okay, so now here, if I'm going with verbalize that how I'm going to accept this patient, or you are getting a questions from the examiner, determine the appropriateness of physiotherapy and if you are going to accept your patient. So the question is, it is appropriate for you to accept this patient? Answer is yes. Yes, it is appropriate. I can accept this patient. But how you gonna verbalize? That is important. Clear? So here, 4 thing you have to keep in your mind. When you are verbalizing about the acceptance of the patient, first thing is you gonna work within your scope of practice. Second thing is you gonna self-reflect. Means I'm gonna self-analyze myself. Self-reflect to determine that whether I should accept this patient. Third, I will focus whether I am competent based on my formal training. Formal training means what I learned before. And fourth point, I can see there is no red flag. This is the basic thing you have to verbalize in this appropriateness. Clear? So here what you gonna say? Initially when you are doing practice, it is easy for you to verbalize. It is not a hard thing. It is just a thing is we are not used to with this type of verbalization. So it is again the English game, IELTS, same like that, speaking exam. So here the thing is we have to work with the appropriate professional wordings. Here we are not going to say that I will do this, I will do this. No, we are going to use the connecting word. We are going to use the appropriate professional language and verbalize. So when determining whether I should accept this patient for the physiotherapy service, I would self-reflect using the criteria of competence, context, and condition to ensure that patient's need fall within my scope of practice and I am competent. Again, I repeat. So, when determining whether I should accept this patient for the physiotherapy service, I would self-reflect myself. You can modify your words. It is not like same exact words we gonna mug up. No, please do not use your mug up thing. You have to use with your open-minded description. Okay. So when determining whether I should accept this patient for the physiotherapy service, I would self-reflect using the criteria of competence, context, and the conditions to ensure. To ensure means I will see that it is proper. To ensure that patient's need fall within my scope of practice and I am competent. Clear? Second thing. Now you have to use this case specific. It's not like we are doing the scripted thing that I'm going to mug up and I'm going to speak about the 2 sentences of the acceptance. No. In this case, I can see my patient. Now my patient means Trevor. So use the patient name. It is very attractive in verbalization. So I can see Trevor is experiencing a new onset of right elbow pain, which require assessment to determine his current status, as well as to plan the appropriate treatment. Why I am doing the assessment? To identify that what is the problem he has, and then I can make my treatment plan. So this is the second thing. Third thing, I can see right elbow fall under the musculoskeletal condition, which is my scope of practice as a physiotherapist, and I am competent enough to address this problem based on my formal training and the clinical experience. So you are writing a very nice letter, or you are speaking, like not writing, you are verbalizing very nice wording in front of examiner that okay, this assessment fall in the musculoskeletal condition, and I can see I am competent enough based on my past experience, based on my formal training, based on my clinical experience. You can say whatever you want. Therefore, it is appropriate for me to accept this patient for the physiotherapy service. Also, I cannot see any red flag currently, which is presented in front of me. In this scenario, I cannot see red flag. But during my assessment, if I come across with any red flag, I will stop my assessment and I will do appropriate referral to the healthcare team. So this is your acceptance. How do you feel? Any question? No question? So determine your appropriateness of the physiotherapy. You have to use the wordings. 4 points. Now script is your. We are also providing the script. I am also providing my notes and all this thing. You have to use this script again and again, again and again. You are good to verbalize. But if you are not doing practice, it is not easy to speak. So determine the appropriateness. First thing is given case, I will do self-reflect. So I will see whether I am capable. Second, it falls in my scope of practice. Third, which domain? Musculoskeletal. Fourth, how I am competent from my formal practice with my clinical experience. And the fifth one is red flag. So these wordings must be in your verbalization. It looks easy when everyone join with the full strength and then they are tapered down. So I don't want that thing again. So appropriateness is done. Clear. Moving onwards. If it is appropriate, if it is within my scope of practice, I would moving forward with the Trevor with informed consent. Or if you get the question, how will you get informed consent for your patient? Now in your PC, you already learned what is informed consent. So informed consent means what? Informed consent means I will explain benefit, risk, alternatives, and address patient concern. We are used to with these words. Now you have to use these words in your verbalization. But it is not these 4 words only. Informed consent means, first of all, I have to identify that whether my patient is competent enough. Now, this is a musculoskeletal case. Here, I'm not going to say that I will check his cognition. Completely inappropriate words. But you have to use very diplomatic way that how you're going to verbalize. Clear? Before beginning of my assessment, I would like to obtain informed consent from the traveler. So you have to use a patient name. You are not going to use that I would like to inform the informed consent from the patient, from the traveler. To do so I'm going to do this. So to do so, I will ensure or I will first ensure that my patient is attentive to me. I will take him to the private room to maintain confidentiality and giving him undivided attention. I will make sure environment is comfortable. We are capable to do the open communication with each other in a safe and relaxed manner. Before starting my communication, I would address my patient's capacity to understand. And if any barrier is there, I would first address that barrier. Again, I repeat, everything is new. Consent. Consent means I'm informing my patient that I'm going to start the assessment with you. How I'm going to communicate? So consent is important to make a rapport with the patient, to giving him the idea what I'm going to do with him. But how I'm going to inform the examiner that I'm going to do with my patient? So this is imagination world. There is no patient. Real patient is not there. So here you're going to do your informed consent in a very professional language. And for that, what you're going to do? So always remember, whenever the informed consent is there, you gonna check in your case, in your given case, is there any competency, cognition level, or patient is not able to understand your language. So patient is competent enough. Second, remember we have in the PC we are doing the patient has aphasia, patient has a communication problem, patient has the traumatic brain injury. All these concepts we have to verbalize in a one sentence. So here you have to look that okay, in given case, language problem is given. In the given case, patient has aphasia. In the given case, patient has a communication problem. In the given case, patient has hearing aid. In the given case, patient is not competent enough. Or there is a SDM. Patient is using the glasses. If something is there, it is mentioned. If it is not mentioned, glasses is okay. Right? But the thing is, when you are working with the informed consent, you have to identify each and everything in your given case. Now that doesn't mean that every scenario you're gonna say that I will check competency, I will check is there any language problem, I will check is there any communication problem. No. What is your given case? Accordingly you have to speak. Now this Trevor, tennis elbow patient coming for the treatment. So here you are taking the informed consent from the patient. Right. So here there is no language problem is mentioned and patient is explaining to you as well. So language is out. Patient doesn't have any English problem or the communication problem. Out. Patient is not coming with the hearing aid. Out. There is no SDM. Out. So here just I am one word I'm gonna say that before beginning my assessment, I would obtain the informed consent from the Trevor, and for that I would take the patient in the private room. Why? So to get the undivided attention, to maintain the confidentiality. So this is the rationale why I am taking him to the private room. To provide him comfortable environment for the open communication. And I would assess patient's capacity to understand. And if it is appropriate, it looks appropriate in the given scenario, I would move forward with my informed consent. That's it. But in case, in your given scenario, somewhere it is mentioned 79-year-old hearing aid is there and patient is coming with the hearing aid. So you have to use that points in your in your informed consent. That in the given scenario, Trevor is coming with the hearing aid. So while taking the informed consent, I will ensure hearing aid is working properly. I will acknowledge this hearing aid. I will take him to the private room. That sentence is common. I will take him to the private room to get undivided attention, to maintain confidentiality, to create the comfortable environment for the open communication. That is a common sentence. And then, as patient is coming with the hearing aid, I would check patient capacity to understand. I will check whether hearing aid is working properly. If it is working properly, I am using the normal tone. But if patient has a difficulty to hear, I will use my tone is little louder and I will also confirm with my gesture. So this is the additional sentence only. And everything is proper and I feel that my patient is capable to understand with the hearing aid, I will moving forward with the informed consent. So here just I explained the two sentence, but the scenario is with the hearing aid. Clear? Any question? Same way, patient has a communication problem. We will discuss later on. Let's move on with the informed consent. So here informed consent for the Trevor, tennis elbow only. Before beginning my assessment, I would like to obtain informed consent from the patient. For that, I will ensure that my patient is full attentive, I will take him to the personal room where why sorry I will take him to the personal room to maintain his confidentiality, to create the comfortable environment for the open communication. I will check my patient's capacity to understand, and I will address if barrier is there. But here I can see there is no barrier with the Trevor. So I will moving forward with my informed consent where I will explain. So here now informed consent original word. Explain the benefit, risk and alternatives. So where I will explain the purpose of the assessment. And before that, I would introduce myself with my name and designation. I would inform him the benefit of the assessment. Now, what is the benefit of assessment? We are not using just word. The benefit of the assessment is it will give me some information regarding his elbow pain. So we have to address this case. We are not going to just using the scripted word. So benefit of this assessment is it will give me the information regarding his elbow pain, which helpful for me to identify the clinical impression and prepare the proper treatment plan. I would also explain him the risk of assessment. What is the risk of assessment? So risk of assessment is might be pain and soreness is aggravating while performing the assessment. I will always work within his pain tolerance, but it will give me the correct idea what structure at fault. I will explain him consequences of not participating. So here benefit I explained, risk I explained. I will explain him the consequences of not participating. Now why I am explaining this thing? So I am explaining him the consequences of not participating in the assessment leading to not diagnose properly, does not help me to make the accurate clinical impression, and therefore I cannot make effective treatment plan. So I will inform him, I will convince my patient that okay, what is the assessment, why it is important, why if you are not taking participation, what happened to you, that way. And then last, additionally. So here see, I'm not going to say that I will. You have to use the connecting word. Additionally, I will provide the alternate treatment options or alternate assessment options which is available if. And I will give equal opportunity to my patient to ask me the questions. If he's asking me questions, I will answer with satisfactory way as per the patient understanding. I will also inform him consent is ongoing process. He can revoke his consent at any period of the time. I will also inform him. I will make sure we are working within his pain tolerance. If he feels discomfort, he can speak me directly. And once my patient is satisfied with my explanation, and I am also confident enough that my patient understood very well, then I will document. Document what is important in your verbalization. So I will document regarding my conversation with informed consent in patient chart. So this is your informed consent. Any question? No question? Nishu, no question? Why consent is important? To develop the rapport with the patient, to start the open communication with the patient. So this is the very important that I'm going to take the consent from my patient, right? What a technique? Maybe you are getting the question that what technique you going to use for the better understanding of the consent process. So consent is the information which I deliver to my patient. So here I'm using the appropriate communication technique. Now I'm using a simple language. I'm not using a medical word. I'm going to do open communication with the patient. I will do active listening of my patient. I will make sure my patient is comfortable throughout the discussion. I will give him time to process. So this is all practical thing. It's not like something that we are, the consent is there and we are good to go. So here the questions when they probe you that okay, why you are giving the consent, what component you're gonna focus, so you can work with this. And I will give him the time to ask me the questions. That way you are working with your consent process. Any question? Okay. So consent we are done with. So consent is this script is there, right? You can use this consent for all the patients, but depending on your case, I don't want that you are using the same concept for all the things. If neurological patient, might be you have a wordings are different. Pulmonary patient and hospitalized, wordings are different. So you have to work with your given case and informed consent. Okay. Now subjective examination. Subjective examination actually means what? I will, once I am getting the informed consent, patient say, okay, Mamta, good to go with my elbow pain. You can do the assessment. First, I will ask the open-ended questions to get the idea from the patient that when happened, what happened, how this is happened, how it is affecting social life, personal life, occupational life. And then accordingly, I will start the objective. Very easy. So subjective, what I did divided into the 9 component. First is the 3 component. This 3 is divided into the 3 more component. This is my pattern, okay? Here, this subjective, I divided into the patient's information plus mechanism of injury. These are the points, okay? Points. Then the second thing is patient's chief complaint. Why he is here today? Chief complaint. And the third thing is dig this chief complaint. Actually, every patient is coming with the pain. So mostly the pain we have to dig for the subjective. So first, this, if you have in your back of the mind, the format is ready, you can easily verbalize. Otherwise, you are trying to remember, you never verbalize. So the subjective is divided into the 3. First 3 is main complaint, mechanism of injury, chief complaint, and dig that thing. Now next 3. Functional limitation. And this 2 is medical. Patients, medical comorbidity, and the medicine. So I can say medical history. Now next 3. This one I divided into the 3 component: social, environmental, and occupational. Red flag. Patient's goal. Because patient's goal is subjective. So notes we are using this patient's goal in subjective, right? So this is in my back of mind. I will keep it, this point, as a verbalized point. So here in this case, Trevor is coming with the elbow pain. So before moving to the subjective examination, I would inform him, I will ask some questions which is relevant to his problem. And it will give me the idea about more detail of his condition, and it will redirect me for my objective examination. So here I explain that why I am doing the subjective examination, rational. So subjective examination, I am doing it to get the detailed idea, and according to that, I will do my objective examination. So this is my subjective examination. Clear? So I have to verbalize. Every student has to verbalize that why you are doing subjective examination. And for that, I will take a consent. So consent is ongoing process. Middle of the time, you have to do the consent. Clear? So I am gonna take the consent verbally. Now we are not taking informed consent. We are just taking verbal consent that okay, we are asking some questions to get the idea about his condition. I would start Trevor with open-ended questions because subjective, all the open-ended questions help me. That what brings you today? What is your main issue which you experience with your elbow? As I can see, Trevor is coming with the right elbow pain and numbness, which is aggravated. But I will ask, is there any injury? Is there any scenario it happens? After that, the pain is increased. So first, I will focus on the mechanism of injury, as here in this scenario, no injury is mentioned. So you have to say the questions and answers based on your scenario. Clear? Again, I repeat. Subjective examination, I would start once I am getting the informed consent. Before starting subjective examination, I would again ask verbally that I am asking few questions related to his condition, which gives me the detailed idea and redirect me regarding my objective examination. I would prefer to communicate with the Trevor. So use the patient name, Trevor, with open-ended questions. I would ask him in a simple language that what brings you today here? What is your main concern related to your elbow? His answer, so you can use your words. His answers gives me the more detailed idea about his mechanism of injury, characteristic of the chief complaint. As I can see, because here original patient is not present, right? So as I can see, now what is given in your scenario? Patient has a right elbow pain, numbness in the finger since last month, which is aggravated with the 2 days, like which is aggravated few days ago. Also, mechanism of injury is not mentioned. But because it is a right elbow, I will ask hand dominance. So this makes you this unique student, because all the student has a scripted subjective examination. But if you are asking particularly case related, you are some extraordinary student in front of examiner. I would ask regarding his chief complaint, apart from pain, is there any other chief complaint? And now I would ask further in detail about his pain. So I'm digging his pain, right? So pain, we have a mnemonic actually. So in the pain, we are working with the, just a minute. OLD, I'm not a mnemonic person, but just for yourself. CSAR, old scar PP. But what I am doing for my point of view, I am digging the pain. So I am asking him more detailed about his pain history with onset of the pain, location of the pain, duration of the pain, characteristic of the pain, associated symptoms, aggravating and relieving factor. So I'm explaining the examiner that, okay, what I'm going to ask him in a one sentence. But I have to elaborate this thing now. So regarding pain, I will ask when the pain started regarding his onset. I will also see that patient has a right elbow pain, but I will ask him, can you pinpoint your pain? And if body chart is available, I will use body chart to ask him that, would you please show where exactly you have a pain? I will also ask about his pain throughout the day. What is the duration? When the pain is increased? What activity aggravates his pain? What activity releases pain? As in the given case, it is mentioned, then speak about that activity. That elbow bending, computer working is aggravating his pain, and relieving, if he take the break, pain is relieved. Further, I am asking related, is there any further thing if you want to explain? Subjectively, 0 is no pain, 10 is maximum pain, how much you are pain on the rating of 0 to 10 to get the idea about the severity of the pain. I will also ask him about the characteristic of the pain, whether he is feeling sharp pain, dull aching pain, throbbing pain. Now, why I'm asking characteristic pain? To get the idea which content, like musculoskeletal or any arterial, is involved or not. I will ask more questions related to the pain. So here I'm using the connecting word. I'm asking the more probing questions related to the pain. that is there any medications he are taking to relieve his pain? Is the pain is continuously progressing? Or did you consult the physician for his pain? Which gives me the detailed idea about the severity. Clear now? I will try to incorporate all the histories. I will document and I will keep in my mind. I will work with the patient's pain tolerance when I am doing the objective examination, because if I am taking the pain history in my subjective examination, I will keep in my mind that objectively my patient has a pain. Clear now? After taking a pain history, so what is my fourth point? Fourth point is functional limitation, medical comorbidity, and medicine. Right? This one. So I will use this point. After taking a pain history, I would like to ask few questions about his activity of daily living. Here I will ask him. Now this patient is not retired patient. He is an occupational computer worker. So I would ask him that what activity is affected in at the daily basis related to his activity of daily living. Now tennis elbow, patient might use it in the brace. So is he using the brace? Is he using any assistive device? Is he using any counterforce brace, prescribed brace? So this is the limitation. How he manage his limitation with pain. So it gives me the idea. And along with that, I will ask medical histories. Now medical history, you gonna use your own words, that I'm gonna ask him about the, is there any x-ray or any investigation is done? Is there any medicines is prescribed? Is he taking the physician, referred by the physician, or is going through the physician? As I see, patient has a comorbidity of the hypertension. How long he is diagnosed with the hypertension? He is taking the medicines, it is mentioned, but he is taking on the regular basis. Is he taking any medication related to pain? This medication is prescribed medication or over-the-counter medication. So these are the few questions you have to keep in your mind, and you have to inform the examiner. With your practice, you can do it. Now, I would ask this pain history, medical history, which is important. So here you're gonna say the rational, which is important to get the idea what is actual patient has a problem and how he is managing. And this subjective history giving me some idea that there is no red flag. What objective examination I have to focus more? Should I consider patient's pain level while performing the examination throughout my assessment? So this is very important. That's why I'm asking this thing. Clear now? Any question? So these three thing is done. Now remaining three thing. What is the remaining three thing for the subjective? Social, environment, and occupation. I keep it as a 1 point. Red flag and patient history. So now I will dig little bit about the social history. Now social history means what? So social history means easy living in the house, easy living in the apartment, easy as a appropriate environment. Sorry, socially is drinking, smoking. So this is the social history. Easy divorced, easy living in the family, easy as a supportive family. Why social history is important? It gives me the idea about the patient's mental status, psychological status, and is there any barrier which affect the recovery. So this is the social history. Environmental. Environmental history means, again, apartment, townhouse, environment is clutter free if there is a balance issue. The environment is well ventilated. So this is the environmental history. Now the occupation. Occupation is very important, because if patient is doing occupation, means uh, what occupation, what is the demand of the occupation, what is the his requirement regarding the occupation, how long he has to sit. So this is the occupational history. So social, environmental, and occupational, we have to dig little bit more. So here how I'm going to verbalize in my subjective examination, that moving forward with my social history, I'm gonna focus that how does his so how does his sorry, moving forward with my social history, I would focus that how his social impact on his pain level. Regarding is he living in family? Is he has a good family support? As I can see, now what is the case? As I can see, he has a newborn baby, and because of the pain, he has a difficulty to lift this baby. Though his wife is very supportive, but he is frustrated, which considered as a negative social impact. Negative means if surrounding is very stressful, even in front of, like right now you are attending my lecture, back of the kitchen you have a very loud noise, you cannot concentrate on my words. So this is your social determinants that okay, because of the pain, patient is frustrated, and again family is not supportive, patient is more depressed. But family supportive, patient can get better easily. That's why social history is important. Environmental history I can see. Now here staircase it's not appropriate because patient has no lower extremity problem. Patient has upper extremity problem. So regarding the environmental, I will ask about his activity of daily living which required shelf activity, over the head activity. Is there any lifting activity? Is there any pushing or pulling activity in his house? What about the furniture? And regarding his occupation, does his job is a desk job? He has the appropriate ergonomic facility in his desk. He is using the ergonomic facility just now or long time ago? What activity is more painful? What activity relieves pain? Sleep. Does he has a disturbed sleep? He has a difficulty while driving. Does he drive the car? So these questions gives me the idea how much his life is affected because of the pain, because of the condition. And I can work according to that. I can make my treatment plan appropriately for that. Along with that, I will screen out there is no red flag. I will ask him, is there any progressive neurological deficit? Is there any tingling numbness is increased? Is there any systemic involvement? Is there any sensory abnormality in both the hand? Because both the hand is there, means cervical myelopathy. Is there any history of trauma around the neck? Is there any gripping problem which he cannot hold it apart from musculoskeletal point of view? Does he diagnose with cancer anytime? So this rule out my red flag questions. Now here see, patient has a tingling numbness. You can ask that subjective history as well. Along with that, I can see patient has a tingling numbness, and now I forgot to ask. So I can add this thing. Then okay, I can see patient also has a tingling numbness. I will ask little bit more subjective questions related to tingling numbness to my patient. Clear now? And lastly, in my subjective examination, I will ask what is purpose for my assessment today. So I will get the idea about his expectation. So I can align my rehabilitation plan with his goal to get involve the patient and provide patient-centered approach. That way you have to verbalize. This is your subjective examination. If format is ready, you can verbalize easily. If format is not ready, it is difficult for you to verbalize. So practice required, it required a lot of practice. It required a understanding of your given case and your verbalization skill. You can use professional language, you can use your own word. It is not necessary that you have to use my word, but format must be there. Subjective, you definitely include the chief complaint, pain history, mechanism of injury, activity limitation, medication history, social history, occupational history, environmental history, red flag screening, and patient goal. 9 point you must covered because examiner is sitting with the checklist. But covering point as per the given case you have to verbalize. It is not like scripted thing. Understood? Clear now? Moving forward with the objective examination. Objective means what? Objective means I am getting the data, numbers. And I am getting more detailed idea that what exactly the patient has a problem. But for objective, consent is must. And why consent is must? Because objective, you're gonna touch the patient. Objective, you're gonna see the patient, means you're gonna disrobe the patient. So here, you are not gonna say that I will ask the consent for the objective examination. No. I am gonna again revisit my consent. So this is a professional language, that I will revisit my consent again regarding, I may disrobe the part to get the better understanding of the problem, and I will make touch. So I will take the consent again from the patient. Patient is understood very well, and with the collaboration with the patient. So this word is important. Collaboration with the patient. I will moving forward with my objective examination. Clear? You can also say that as the consent is ongoing process, I would like to take the consent regarding necessity of exposing the body part to make sure that patient is well aware about the situation. So it is your words. You can, I will give you the script, but you can use variety of the way. But the moral of the story is you have to explain that, okay, why I am taking consent, because I may palpate your area. I may do this facial test which may aggravate his pain. You can use that thing also. I may disrupt the area, and patient are aware about that thing. Okay. Now regarding objective. Again, same like subjective. From my side, I make a objective in a variety of the way. Objective, what I did, divided into the three component. First is the observation only. Second is the range of motion, spatial test, sorry, neurological examination, and the spatial test. Just a minute, sorry, my mistake. So range of motion, neurological examination, and the spatial test. And then last, here, depending on the case, you are working with patient's functional assessment, outcome measure, and palpation. So this format is fixed. You have to speak each and every point. Script is yours, but format you have to follow definitely, because this will give you the idea what actually my patient has a problem. Now observation. When I observe, observation is divided into the three portions. First is the posture. Second is the gait. Third is the functional assessment. Now, it is not necessary that every scenario has this posture, gait, and functional assessment you have to verbalize. This patient has a tennis elbow. So, gait you can exclude, but you can observe the posture and you can observe the functional activity. So, observation gives you the idea. Clear now? So, here what you're going to do, as the consent is ongoing process, I will revisit my consent, and I would explain him regarding the necessity of the observation of observational skill, where I will expose the body area. I will take the consent for the disrobing him. I might palpate the area, and I might do the spatial test which increase his pain, but I always work within his pain tolerance. Once my patient give the consent, I would go ahead with observational analysis, where I would observe the posture. I would inform the patient be in minimal cloth, so it will be easy for me to identify postural deviation. I will do top to bottom approach. Now it is up to you. If you say top to bottom or bottom to top. But do not say that I will use top to bottom and bottom to top. Both the approach you cannot do right away. Either top to bottom or bottom to top, that way. So I will use top to bottom approach, where top to bottom is first is the ear level. So I will observe his body part. I will observe his ear level, the alignment of the nose level with the midline of the sternum, the shoulder level. Now patient has a tennis elbow. So there is no need to post all the postural analysis, but at least forwarded posture you can go ahead. I will observe the patient, the posture from top to bottom, where I will focus particularly with the case specific, regarding his upper extremity posture from the front, side and the back. I will get the idea that is there any abnormality related to the spinal deviation, because posture is spinal deviation. I will also examine, is there any round shoulder, is there any forwarded posture, or is there any patient's tendency to hold the body part. I would also observe the joint above and below, means patient has elbow pain, so I can observe joint above and below to get the more idea. I will observe, is there any swelling, bruise, any redness, any scar, which is not mentioned here. I would look for the deformities. I will look about the attitude of the limb, muscle wasting. I will look about the tropical changes of the skin, because patient has a tingling numbness. We may see about the tropical changes of the skin. I would observe the appearance of the upper limb. I will compare right versus left. Clear? I would also observe patient's functional performance, which gives me the idea about his adaptation, because functional performance, if I have a pain, I will do the compensatory approach. I am not doing any activity with the pain. Body never does with the pain. Body try to avoid the pain. Right? So here I will assess his functional assessment. I will observe his functional performance, how he is using compensatory approach and reduce his pain, which gives me the idea which trick movement he is doing, how he is compensating his movement, and what muscles he is using excessively. Right? Now, once I am done with my observational analysis, so here I am not going to explain gait, because patient has a tennis elbow, gait is no needed, right? But yes, patient is using the cane in your given case, then you're gonna see that I'm gonna see how he's using the cane with the elbow pain while walking. So at that time you can use it. So observation, variety of these things: appearance, redness, swelling, scar, tropical changes, postural assessment, gait assessment, assisted device assessment, functional assessment. Clear? Then you are coming with the range of motion. So range of motion is an objective examination. Now objective, how you gonna get the objective examination? Via goniometer. Right? So here you're gonna say that I will do the range of motion examination by using the goniometer. And here, sorry, I'm using active, passive, both, not active assisted. I'm using the range of motion assessment with active assessment as well as passive assessment. Why? Because active gives me the idea about my contractile property. Passive gives me the idea about my non-contractile property. Clear? And again, you're gonna verbalize that if patient has a pain with the active, that means muscle is at fault, contractile tissue is at fault. And if patient has a pain with the passive, means non-contractile tissue at the fault. Along with the range of motion, I will do MMT via manual muscle testing. Now, why MMT is important? Getting the idea about the contractile structures, its strength. Also, I will perform RIMS, registered isometric movement, which gives me the idea about the contractile properties. I will check patient's capacity to hold muscle strength against my resistance for 5 seconds. And I will get the idea whether the RIMS is strong and painful or the strong and painless. So that way your range of motion you're going to verbalize. Then you're going to verbalize the neurological testing. So why neurological testing is important? Patient has a tingling numbness. So I would perform. Now here what you're going to say? I will check my patient is comfortable or not. I will also address if he has a pain. I will give him comfortable position. And with his ongoing consent, I am moving forward with my neurological testing, where I will do dermatomal assessment, myotomal assessment, and reflex, because neurological is this, plus sensory examination for the peripheral nerve. That way you are doing neurological. Here you're gonna dig yourself. There is a more points for the neurological. Today I'm not gonna verbalize. But dermatomal, why you are doing dermatomal, why you are doing myotomal, reflex, and the sensation you can use superficial and deep sensations. Now here you're gonna say the reason that I am doing neurological assessment to differentiate between mechanical pain versus the neurogenic pain. To rule out the radiculopathy or any nerve root impingement, or to get the idea about the peripheral nerve involvement, which helps me to make appropriate clinical impression for my patient. If needed, I can make appropriate referral, as well as I will do appropriate treatment plan for my patient, which is beneficiary. Now, beneficiary is ethical word, which is beneficiary for my patient. Functional measure. Functional measure means ability of my patient to do the functional activity. Right? So here functional measure means grip strength. I can use with the dynamometer. Here you gonna use the orthopedic testing. So for the tennis elbow, you are going with the Cousin test, Mills test. I can also make the golfer elbow test to rule out the medial epicondylitis. Other special tests also you're gonna do. For example, thoracic outlet syndrome, Edson Roos, to rule out the thoracic outlet because patient has a tingling numbness. Patient has the tingling numbness in the ring and the little finger. So you're gonna do the Sperling test to rule out the cervical nerve root. So you have to use the special test name. How to perform you are not gonna explain. But you're gonna use the test name and you're gonna say why I am doing this test. Why I am doing this test. And also you can use ULTT for the ulnar nerve. So ULTT for the median, ulnar and radial. And that way I can rule out the median and ulnar, median and radial. I will see in the given case, patient has. Now in the given case, what is the patient's problem? So in the given case, patient has the tenderness at the medial elbow, sensation on the fourth and fifth disease, weakness in the intrinsic hand muscles, which is also detected by the dynamometer for the grip strength. And ergonomically, if he has the prolonged exposure, the pain and symptoms is increased. Clear? So objectively, what we are using in our normal stuff, we are doing it. And then palpation, I will palpate the structures to check the idea about the swelling, temperature. So palpation actually 3T. Temperature, tone, and tenderness. I will palpate this thing, temperature, tone, and tenderness, to get the idea what exact structure is involved, where the exact location of the pain, whether there is an inflammatory condition is on with the hot and cold sensation, right? And also outcome measure. Here you remember the outcome measure for the upper limb disability or dash scale. Also upper limb functional test. SPADI for the shoulder, not for the elbow. So you're gonna use some special outcome measures, particularly for the elbow, particularly for the upper extremities. And then you are come across with the additional information in your exam. And then you have again 2 to 3 minutes. So read the additional information and give me your clinical impression for this patient. So you're not right away start. You're gonna see this thing, and at that time write it down that what DD you're gonna make it here in this case. Okay, here you are getting the 2 minute, but I'm not moving forward. I'm just giving you the idea today. So as the given scenario gives me the as the given scenario with additional information, first of all, I will accommodate or I will see my subjective and objective examination. I will collaborate with the additional informations to conclude my clinical impression for the traveler. Here, I can see with the given additional information, patient has the tenderness over the right medial epicondyle. Active elbow motion is within a normal limit. Elbow flexion is painful. Rims, wrist flexors is painful and strong. Biceps and triceps reflex is normal. Tingling numbness radiating to the ring and little fingers. As per my special test of the Cozen test, thoracic outlets, TOS test, golfer elbow test, ULTT of the median, ulnar and radial, I will keep in my mind. Along with that, patient's difficulty to perform the activity of daily living and relieving factors. So all this giving me the clinical impression of my patient going towards. So it is the golfer elbow or cubital tunnel syndrome or Guyon's canal syndrome. So answer is, it is going towards the cubital tunnel syndrome because golfer elbow is a musculoskeletal condition versus patient has a radiating and tingling numbness. So it is the cubital tunnel. Here I can also see the neurological examination. Actually, neurological examination little bit more verbalization. I didn't mention today. But myotome and dermatome you have to verbalize little bit more. You can use that wordings here as well. So here I can go with the cubital tunnel syndromes with few points. Now what are the points? Tenderness at the medial epicondyle, sustained elbow flexion, increase the pain, intrinsic muscle weakness, the ulnar distribution of the fingers on the palmar side, having a tingling numbness, and rims for the wrist flexors are painful and strong versus reflex is normal, which rule out the central pathology. I did differential diagnosis from few conditions. Now, which condition you did differential diagnosis? So, I did differential diagnosis with C8 T1 radiculopathy because here the area is the C8, right? So, I did differential diagnosis with the C8 T1 by performing the Sperling test, by checking the dermatome and myotome of the C8, which is not relevant in this given scenario. I did differential diagnosis with tennis elbow, where the lateral epicondyle is not painful. I will do differential diagnosis with the carpal tunnel syndrome, where the median nerve distribution is not affected versus ulnar nerve is affected. I will do differential diagnosis with the Guyon canal versus the cubital tunnel, where patient has the elbow flexors, wrist flexors, painful and strong. Patient has the elbow pain, located particularly right medial epicondyle, which rule out the Guyon's canal only. The pain is originating from the medial epicondyle. So here you have to give 3 to 4 differential diagnoses from your side when you verbalize. Then why I am thinking this? I rule out thoracic outlet syndrome because patient doesn't have a vague pain. Patient has a particular ulnar nerve distribution pain. And that's why my clinical impression is cubital tunnel syndrome. That is your actually case 1. Here in your exam, the case 1 is associated with ethical merge. So here ethical merge means regarding the consent. Why you are taking consent? How you know that your patient understood your verbalization? So I can say that I asked few questions to confirm that he understood what I am saying to him. What are the social determinants? Social determinants means so how it is affect his activity with his family or with surrounding. So social determinants, it's a now you have to use to with this word. There are positive and negative social determinants. Positive, he has a job. financial, he's secured. He has a strong, strong support from the family. He has a supportive wife. He has a child, which redirect his mind from the pain. Versus negative, he is frustrated, inability to lift the child, making more anxious and frustrated. He is not pursuing his hobby as a cyclist. Marathon is like, sorry, some recreational activities coming up. So it will has she has a stress and he has a job stress. So these are the negative. Ethically, you are getting the probing question that how the social determinants affect on his body, affect on his performance. Ethically, you might get, okay, how are you going to explain the billing structure to him? Are you taking any infection control with him? If he is not interested with the physiotherapy, what are you going to do? So you have to answer with the professional manner. That way, your case one is moving with step by step. Today, I give the brief idea, very brief idea. We have to dig each and every point in your case one, but this is generalized idea that how you gonna verbalize in front of examiner with your case one. What is your recommendation after your assessment? So because first day if I'm assessing, I have to give the recommendation that see, I am gonna do the recommendation regarding ergonomic advice, education, regarding my quick management plan, regarding the patient's understanding of the scenario and the what is the actual problem. If any red flag is there, now might be you have a ethics question. What red flag you gonna suspect here? Right? Is there any systemic involvement? Is patient has a fever? Patient has a nerve compression and the spinal cord involvement. That is a red flag. I have, if I'm suspecting, I'm gonna refer to the emergency, refer to the physician. So you are getting the probing questions based on your scenario along with your verbalization, because if you do mistake in your verbalization, you caught by the examiner and then you are getting more and more probing. But if you are going thoroughly fluently with all the points in your mind, it is easy for you to verbalize. Main thing is verbalize. Clear? Any question? All silent today. Here might be you are getting the question that wife is coming with the husband and wife is asking how is doing. So again, our PCA ethics, here we are going to verbalize. He has a sports coming, cycling thing is coming, and he's asking when I can do the cycling without pain. Probing questions. He does not want to wear the orthosis. What will you do? So this ethical questions now you have to verbalize in a professional and systemic manner. If he's very anxious and depressed now, what will you do? So that way you are gonna, if PTA is involved, how you are getting the consent for the PTA? Do you involve the PTA in your assessment? So these are the multiple ethics probing questions. We have to keep doing it. It is easy, but this is the actual format of your case one. Any question? No question? All good? All silent. Ravinder,
Yes.
any question? No question?
Clear. No, it's clear till now.
Okay. How we are doing for your January and March batch? That is, let me explain to you guys. So those who are going for the January batch, particularly so we have a team. It's not only me, but yes, case one is taken by the NIPA, but case one, my recorded video, particularly no one is there, but only I recorded my videos in terms of how to do the consent, how to do the subjective examination in detail, how to do the objective examination, how to identify the clinical impression, all the portions I recorded. NIPA also taking the things. Case 1, you are getting the 5 scenario: MSK, neuro, cardio, pulmonary and pedia. Case 2 we will discuss on the Wednesday. Join with me. Case 2 we are gonna, case 2 is taken by me actually. So case 2, me and new me, but I am taking main thing MSK, neuro and pedia. New me is taking cardio and pulmonary only, two things. And my planning is by the end of October, all the students are together. Here you have to also verbalize. It's not like I am just verbalizing. It's not that. You have to speak because now it is a verbalization game and the game is changed when you are able to verbalize. It's not listening thing. You are not gonna listener now anymore. You have to speak up. You have to properly use the words and it will comes with the practice. Initially it is hesitant, you have the difficulty to speak, you have no words, but when you speak you know that okay, I cannot speak with more than this much. So today you are seeing me because I am used to with verbalizing all this thing. But when your turn comes, you just speak that okay, I will take informed consent with the benefit, risk and alternatives. Clear? So when you are used to with the verbalization in front of me, it's something is different experience and you have to do it. My planning is by the end of October, I try to finish practical theory portion, means what you have to verbalize, how the case is going, what are the probing questions and all this thing. November onwards, mentoring start where students are divided no more than 10 students for the January batch only. So March students are distributed in mentoring group, but they are not allowed to speak. They are just gonna listen. Clinical ethics class I am taking. There are three and four, minimum three class. Actually, I am trying to finish three class, but three clinical ethics where I am gonna explain you if any ethical questions comes, how you gonna verbalize. Okay, so clinical ethics class I am taking it. You are getting the documents and you are getting all the notes with the answer keys and everything. So at least you are getting the idea what I have to verbalize and then with the practice you can do it. For the November, January mentoring started within a 1 month of November. I am trying to finish. Again, case 1 you are getting 5 mentoring, MSK, neuro, cardiopulmonary and pedia. Case 2 you are getting 5 mentoring. In January exam going student, mock exam is first week of December. 1 month before you have a mock, so at least you are getting idea where you are weak. And December, March exam going student mentoring will started same like January. And March exam going students mock exam is in month of January or mid-January. And that way we are running a show. And the last month, we are doing practice of probing questions where you are, then everyone is again merged for the exam going students. And the probing questions practice are started where me, Numi or the Nipa throwing the questions and you are there to answers. Practice is important. Understanding of case is important. It is not script that I am going to verbalize same as like multiple sclerosis, ALS and the tennis elbow. Everyone has a different scenario. Given case, you have to understand that this case, what actually it speak about. It is tennis elbow, so I have to work with the tennis elbow. Still today, I didn't explain a lot of explanation. I have a lot of thing to say about the neurological examinations and all this thing, but I cut short for your better understanding. But when you are start doing practicing, it is important. Taken care of your voice, very important. Proper hydration, very important. Develop the endurance because you have to speak for 3 hours. For me, it's easy because I'm used to speak, but for you, it's not easy. Many students in a mock, I see that they are tired and then they have no words. They stop like they say, I am done. So practice for your endurance, practice for your voice is also important. And this OCE exam is your final exam, so give them importance and work accordingly. It's easy if you are doing on right direction. If it is hard, if you are not doing it properly, and if you are taken as a granted, you are out. OCE gives you the result same like PCE. So it is only now last exam, work and finish it. And you are lucky enough that your clinical component is a separate exam. Same way CPT, remember, like imagine PC and the CPT, but you are lucky enough. So at least now grab this opportunity and clear it. Any question? Next class will start by 29 onwards. 29 September we will start the MSK case 1. And Monday and Friday night, NIPA. Wednesday and Thursday night, me right now, case 2. Same way the Naomi is taking, but Naomi not right now. Mid of the October she is taking for the 2 scenario only. So minimum 4 lectures, night 9 to 11. All the lectures are recorded. But I want you are live with me. If you are joining with me, must be live. It's not you are just, and yes, videos on. So properly you have to sit, properly you have to keep the videos on and then verbalize. Because behind the curtain you can verbalize, in front of the camera you cannot. So I don't want practice with the off the camera. So make sure you are doing the camera on if you are joining with me. Minimum 4 lectures definitely throughout this October month. When the mentoring does, then the batch is divided, but at least minimum 2 lectures for case 1 and case 2 each batch. And that way you have to do the ongoing practice. Mentoring, if you miss, mentoring is not recorded. You have to be present in the lecture. Mentoring is a sharpened skill where your script is ready and you are verbalize, and then you are the one speak and I'm gonna listen. So I'm a active listener. Right now you are a listener. It makes a difference. So mentoring, I restricted the number of the student per batch. And that way we are going ahead. One mock exam is included. So January we are working with the December mock exam. March we are working with the mid-January mock exam. Mock exam I am not taking. Again, one more thing. Mock exam I am not taking it. As a personally, I am not an examiner. Examiner is someone. But you are getting the mock exam. Mock exam, a whole mock exam I created. Probing questions I created. Examiner is there to ask you the questions. They are not giving you the lesson. They are not giving you the learning. They are there to ask you the questions. Okay. After 3 hours, you are getting the 1 hour examiner feedback, but your whole mock is recorded. And this recorded is analyzed by me as a third party. And at the end of the mock, everyone is getting the feedback from my side, particularly for every student. So I'm making a bunch of the student. I'm giving the mock discussion where I'm going to explain them what examiner is want to listen and what you did mistake, because I personally see all the videos as a third party. While taking a mock, it's easy, but everyone wants that, okay, Mamta, take the mocks. I don't want it. I want neutralized things. So I'm see the all the recorded. Even March exam, May exam, I did the same thing. In October also, I did the same thing. So I'm just giving you all the ideas upfront rather than behind. So this is the way we are doing it. And until the last exam date, like if you have an exam, today is 18th and 19th October, everyone is like, it's not like same like PC that you are getting one-on-one. Same like PC that, okay, you are getting right away. But here the OC is there. Your verbalization skill is important. Uh, your ability to identify the case, practice is important, and everything is there. In my academy, everything I provided, including the material, including the probing questions, practice, lectures. You are getting lectures of the two version. You are getting the recorded lecture of the previous batch and your batch. So every batch you are getting the recorded lectures of the two batch. So at least you are getting the idea what the previous batch does and how you're gonna do it. So if you see these recorded lectures early, then you are getting the idea what we are doing and how you're gonna verbalize. So it is better to you in the exam also you are doing it. July exam students, January, Vinita. Mostly January, I am planning to start July exam batch. Right now, focusing with the January and March.
So, ma'am, should we join with the July batch?
It's up to you. See,
Okay.
if you join until your first trial, you are with me.
Okay.
But I am not allow you to speak in the mentoring lecture. Regular lectures, yes, I am allow you to speak. But what happened, Vinita, the 1 year after the students are joining with us, and then they are not actively participate because they are not under pressure for exam.
Right, ma'am.
right?
Okay,
So
yeah.
I want let appropriate students so they have a motivation of each other, and I don't want, see, I'm always bombarding person for my student, and if you have no motive, no goal, then you are not actively participate.
Okay.
Very true story. You have some function and you have social events, you definitely go with that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so think accordingly.
Okay.
But if
Thank
you
you.
join, you can get the recording, you are getting the access, everything you are getting it. If you
Okay.
want to do the practice in the slow manner, you can do it.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome. See you guys. Good night. See you Wednesday night for the case 2. Bye. Take care.